have privilege. So do you. You have privilege. This week, we're going to talk about privilege. What is privilege, including white privilege? What does it mean, and why it is not a four-letter word? Now, if you felt your walls going up, if you felt yourself getting defensive, lower them. Let's have a conversation. It's just me and you right now. It's nobody else. Happy Monday. Thank you for joining me for this week's Weekly Wisdom. This week is a continuation on last week where we discussed the unconscious bias. But this week I want to dive into the term of privilege. What does it mean? Why is it important? The first thing that I want to talk about is we are going to talk about white privilege. But before we can discuss what white privilege is, let's go ahead and just define privilege. As far as I know, I don't think I have any ridiculously wealthy friends. If I do, I need to know that. But I don't think I do. So I want you to imagine right now, especially if you have kids, and I ask you, does Brad Pitt's children have an advantage over your children? He's rich, he's famous, he's wealthy. Does his kids have an advantage? Most of us would say yes. We can see that. We can feel that. I don't blame Brad Pitt. He worked very hard for what he has. But his kids didn't. His kids were born into it. They have privilege. Privilege is not a bad thing. We don't blame Brad Pitt or his kids. We're not like, oh my God, you have privilege, you're awful. That's not what that's about. But we can acknowledge the fact that it exists. All of us have privilege. If you are in a heterosexual relationship, no matter what else you have going on for you, you have privilege. Because you can walk down the street holding the hand of your partner and there will be no side eye or judgment. If you are in a non-mixed relationship, if you're a white person with a white person, a black person with a black person, Hispanic person with a Hispanic person, you have privilege. My mother is very white and my father is very Puerto Rican. And there is still sometimes, whenever we're home, there's some side eye given to them. So if you're in a non-mixed relationship, you have privilege. If you are upper middle class wealthy, you have privilege. If you don't have to worry what you're going to eat next, you don't have to worry if your tummy's going to be hungry, you have privilege. If you are a Christian relationship, if you practice a Christian religion, you have privilege. There are all types of privilege. And now that we know that they exist and we have that basic understanding that privilege is something that you have that for the most part, you didn't really work for. You just have it. Like I was born, even though my father's Puerto Rican, I took on a lot more, minus the unibrow, I took on a lot more of my mom's features. So I am white. I am in a heterosexual relationship. So I have a husband. I am a Christian. So I practice a Christian faith. So there's all types of levels of privilege that I have. But for today, what we're going to dive in next is white privilege. Now, again, if you felt your walls go up, lower them. Take a deep breath, and I need you to come at this from a place of learning and understanding. We can agree to disagree at the end. You don't have to agree with me. But let's just hear each other out. And if you do want to continue this conversation, so it is two-way, let me know. I'm always happy to have the conversation. Okay. So when we talk about white privilege, what does that mean? Now, many times people think of white privilege and they think I've earned everything. I've worked hard. I feel you on that one. I grew up financially challenged, worked very hard. I remember whenever I graduated with my MBA, that was a huge accomplishment for me and where I've come. But it doesn't mean that there weren't other areas where the privilege showed up. So white privilege means that I spent some time learning about proper etiquette, proper dining, and I can now blend into almost any environment when I go into a dining area. And I'm not the only one that looks like me. Something that I've been paying attention to a lot when I go into places. Many times if there is a black person there, there's maybe one or two. I can't imagine how lonely that must feel, being the only person that looks like you. And my next door neighbors are black and they have two twin girls. And so they invited us to the birthday party and I went birthday shopping for the girls and I was trying to find a Barbie or a doll. I could not find any that were not white. That is white privilege. There's a lot of other areas where white privilege will show up, but one of the biggest areas is if you look in the room where decisions are being made, most of the people in the room are white. And out of most of those white people, most of them are male. And so I know it always bothered me whenever white men make decisions about my future and my daughter's future and my health, because it's hard to understand. I don't know what it's like to be a white male. They don't know what it's like to be a white female. I can't imagine taking that one step further and knowing that somebody is making decisions for me and my family and my kids, and they don't understand what it's like to be me in any way. That is what white privilege is. Again, it's not something, I don't feel shame knowing that I have white privilege. First time I heard it and the first time I acknowledged it, I did. But then I moved past it because the shame does nothing. The shame and the guilt attached to white privilege does no good. It tends to do more harm than good. I don't feel shame, but I do feel responsibility in that I have it and this is what I need to do with it. These are the conversations that I need to have. These are the responsibilities that I have to understand what that privilege means and make sure that I'm using it for good and not evil. Understanding that unconscious bias, what it means, and why it's even more important because of white privilege. So know when we discuss white privilege, it's not minimizing or negating anything that you've done. But it is something that you need to be aware of. Because the things that happen when we're not aware of our privilege is that we think, well, I grew up poor and I was able to go get a college degree. I don't understand why they can't. Oh, wait, you want to forgive everybody else's student loans? Well, what about me? I've already paid off my student loans. I've already put in the work. And when we hold down the whole based on they should have to work and suffer just as much as I have, I mean, there's danger in that. Do some more digging into privilege. All privilege. Especially white privilege if you're white. And again, if you want to have these one-off conversations, these are important conversations. And I would be more than happy to. Checking my notes. I think I covered everything that I wanted to cover. So if you are still here, thank you very much. I appreciate you bearing with me the past couple of weeks. And I promise this isn't going to be the last time that we have one of these conversations. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's Weekly Wisdom. Have a wonderful week. And don't forget, you got this.